here we go. Thanks everybody for joining. We're calling this series Your Best Interview, and myself and Stephanie over the next 3 weeks are going to be walking through how to prep for an interview, how to conduct your best interview, and then some of our best tips that we have picked up along the way. So let me introduce myself, and Stephanie will do the same, and then we'll hop into it. My name is Libby Magliolo, and I've been in the corporate world for about 10 years, started in management consulting and then pivoted to corporate strategy. Along the way, I have learned a lot about job interviewing, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so happy to share some of those tips here. So Stephanie, what about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Smith. I'm the founder of Refined and Ready Career Consulting, where I help everyday people write great resumes. Before I got into resume coaching, I did a little bit of massage therapy, some social work, and then 10 years in public accounting. So really excited to talk with you all today and share some tips.
So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be hopping in the same time slot. Like I said, today is going to be focused all about how to prep for the interview. Next Thursday, we're going to be focused on how to answer questions, how to conduct yourself in the interview. And then the last week, like I said, we are going to be focusing on some of our best tips, things that we have learned along the way. So let's back up. So before we even get into the interview room, we need a really great resume that actually gets us the interview. So Stephanie, this is your area of expertise. So can you give us kind of the high-level view of what are the most important things that people need to keep in mind for preparing a great resume that gets them the interview?
Yeah, so just, very quickly, 3 things I like to tell people are super important for your resume. So you want it to be visually appealing. You want it to be tailored to each job description, and you want it to be precise with clear language. So visually appealing, it's got to be readable. It's got to be well laid out. It has to be something that someone, can get themselves through rather quickly. If they've got to struggle to read it, they're not going to read it, and you're just out the door. In terms of being tailored to each job description, you need to be speaking to the position that you're applying for. That doesn't mean you have to totally overhaul your resume every time, but you need to look at it and read it through the lens of that job description so that you're speaking to what they're asking for. And then finally, we want it to be clear and concise with precise, strong language. You need to be discussing your measurable accomplishments, things that are, very objective, things that are going to be meaningful to the person that you're talking to. So if you've got those 3 things down, you're on a great start to having a great resume.
I think your second point, I'm really guilty of that. I don't do a good job of tailoring my resume to each job description. I think, hey, this is my resume, take it or leave. So that's the one that I've fallen victim to. Okay, so let's say your resume gets you in the door and you've got the interview. So what are your best tips on how to actually prepare for the interview?
Yeah. So one of the things that I emphasize a lot is researching the company. You need to really understand where it is that you're applying. So the role that you're applying for, make sure you understand that role. How does that role fit into the broader organizational structure? Are you entering a portion of the company that is sort of key to success? Are you in a supportive role? How does everything work together? Where is the company coming from? What's their history? What's their background? Where are they heading? What are they hoping to do in the future? And how can you contribute? So you really need to know inside and out the company that you're applying to. How about you, Libby? What's your best advice?
Well, I really like your tip because I think it shows that you're tuned into the what's in it for me from the perspective of the company, that you care about their objectives and everything. And I think that shows being very in tune with what the company needs. So I love that. Mine is kind of on the other side of things, and it's familiarizing yourself with your own resume. So the advice that I give is to have one anecdote or example for every single bullet point on your resume, as well as every single bullet point on the job description. There's going to be a lot of overlap between those 2 lists of anecdotes, but your interviewer is looking for 2 things. One, that you have the right relevant experience, and 2, that you have a demonstrated track record of success. So you're trying to show them, hey, what you mentioned in the job description, not only have I done that before, but I have done it well, and here are the results I have to show for that. So prepping those anecdotes ahead of time is my main tip. And between, the external prep of looking for the company research and then the internal of looking at your resume, I think those are kind of the 2 big categories of prep.
That's huge. That's great. What would you say is the biggest mistake that you see people making when they're getting ready for an interview? What's the biggest mistake going into one?
I think it's kind of along the lines of what I mentioned, and that's not preparing those anecdotes and not preparing to talk about your personal experience. And I totally understand why, because I think the misconception is, well, it's me. It's my background. It's my professional experience. I've lived through these things. There's nothing I know better than talking about myself. I can do that. And so I totally understand why people think that. But, you're talking about yourself, but in kind of a very specific, structured way. And so you have to prepare to do that. So I remember I had this one interview, and the interviewer came in, and I could see that he had marked up my entire resume, and there were notes and there were questions. And I remember the color draining from my face. And that moment I realized, oh no, this person knows my resume better than I know my resume. And he said, hey, it says here you reduced marketing expenses. How much did you reduce those by? And no idea. I remember literally having to look over his shoulder at my own resume. It was not a great moment. So
Oh no.
it wasn't great. But I think that's the mistake, is not preparing to talk about yourself, but not preparing to talk about yourself in that very specific kind of interview format. So that's me. What about you?
That makes a lot of sense. Just kind of thinking about, what you're sharing there and your example. I mean, I think it's a very similar mistake that I would say is, I think a lot of people go in thinking, okay, so it's a conversation. Like, how hard can this be, right? Like, I talk to people all the time. Like, I make conversation, right? And you need to know your resume. You need to prepare about the company, and you need to be prepared to speak in this fashion. So, know things inside and out. And yes, you want to be friendly, you want to be cordial, you want it to be relaxed. You're not here to go in and be a robot. But preparation is key, and it goes such a long way. So similar to your thing, like very much in the same vein. It's so important to prepare and be ready to talk and speak to yourself and speak to the company.
Well, it sounds like you didn't learn it the hard way, like I did.
No, not at all, never. So yeah, this is what we have for you today, guys. We are gonna, as Libby mentioned, we're gonna be doing this for the next 2 weeks. So if there's anything specific that you'd like us to address or talk about in the next 2 weeks, please drop them in the comment section. We will be sure to open with those next time. In the meantime, we are going to drop some free resources in the comment section as well, so that you guys are better prepared going into into interviews and getting your resume up to snuff. And we look forward to talking with you guys next Thursday. Bye.
Thanks, for see you next time.